Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mirikitani with another episode of Weighing In, joined by my good friend Grant Turner. We are brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and sponsored by Nike Wrestling. Go to Athlete PS for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. I don't normally say this, but we're going to talk a little NIL, so I will say that the opinions expressed about NIL and all the other topics we talk about today are those of Grant and mine. Those of you that are missing Mark Ostrander, he got called into work, although Grant, I don't believe him. Our fantasy football draft is tonight. I believe he is just knee deep in spreadsheets, getting ready for picking out of the 5-hole. How you been, man? You have a good weekend?
Yeah, it was good. It was good to have an extra day to catch up on some stuff. And then, of course, on Sunday night, I had a fantasy football draft as well. So, of course, I understand all the spreadsheets. We're talking like all of a sudden everybody got upset with the draft order. So we had to do it immediately at 5 minutes before the draft because they're all upset. So I went from the 9th pick to the 3rd overall pick in a snake draft, 12-man league. Pretty happy.
Well, I'm in the 9th spot. And I'm the commissioner, so I can't change it. So
we'll exchange notes because I had about 3 weeks worth of time at number 9. I got a couple of sleepers that I picked up. So
there you go. I'll take it. I'll take all the help I can get. So lots to get to this week. A couple of interesting things. We're going to finish with the World Team Trials, but on the podcast last week, I had Brian Smith, Rocky Elam, and Keegan O'Toole from the University of Missouri, the head coach, and obviously the 2 young men that just won world titles. And Keegan O'Toole made a bet, GT, with Kendrick Maple that if he won a world title, Maple's got to wrestle in the U.S. Open. So that'll be coming out, not the World Team Trials. You have to qualify for that, but the U.S. Open next year. And I asked them, one of the things I love about talking to young guys, and you coach, there's a lot less filters. They just say what they think. And O'Toole's like, he is so good. He's like, he beats everybody in the room. He's like, he beats me. So it's going to be interesting to see, but if Maple comes, and I guess he's still super light. He obviously looks super fit, but I think he'd go in at 65. Just, I'll ask you this, and if it's embarrassing, you don't have to answer. Have you made any crazy bets with your guys over the years?
Over the years, yes.
Any that you can discuss?
There had been talk of something where I would have to what was US Open type stuff, or then it became Veterans Worlds because I exceeded the age category. So nothing that actually fell through. Nothing crazy as I'll get a tattoo or something like that. But those guys love it, man. They love having the coaches kind of be out there and compete. So I know that there's been multiple times where people have had to come out of retirement due to athletes winning a title or a team title of some sort.
Freyer that one year. Freyer did it, I think, with Mackay, and then wrestled pretty well. Placed 7th or 8th. So yeah. I ended up doing the Jiu-Jitsu Worlds the first year based on a bet. So there you go. And again, old guy division. So
right.
Not black belt absolute, young guy, but yeah, I got in there. So that'll be fun to watch. Big news, Gable Stevenson to the WWE. His brother also posted signing. This changes things a lot of different ways. Intermat put out a really cool article about who's coming back and how deep these weight classes are. And they also just talked about, they're the first ones to put out rankings. And they have their own caveats and rules, and we'll get into that in the next couple of weeks as more and more sources put out rankings. By the way, I'll probably say this 25 times this year, a special nod to the rankers this year. This is going to be the hardest year ever starting, with all these guys coming back and extra years and people that didn't wrestle last year and COVIDed and everything else. So, but Gable Stevenson not wrestling changes Minnesota obviously negatively in terms of team points. And it also really helps the Michigans of the world, the Iowas of the world, the teams with good Penn States of the world, teams with good heavyweights. So I'm guessing you as a Nike guy probably knew about Gable's decision more than the general public did. And, maybe have heard stuff. What do you think overall, just as a guy who's that good, when you go to college, they say your job is to get a job and make money. He's going to make a lot of money, right?
Well, I think, and this is per some of the sources that I have, is that I believe even with signing with the WWE, I believe he will still be able to compete collegiately.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I think once again, in kind of the whatever MMA, WWE, wrestling circles that we frequently, have conversations in, is basically like investment into a fighter. Like, hey, we know that you're going to be maybe coming to us at some point in time, but continue to do what you're doing, whatever it is, but we're going to try to build and promote and maybe do some, appearances, basically keep you relevant within our company as you kind of build our brand simultaneously. Could be something to look out for as well if he does come back, or if he just goes full time in the WWE. But I believe with that they still can compete collegiately, even though they're signed and developed through the WWE company.
Well, that's super interesting. I didn't know that. And clearly I don't have a good poker face because that was shocking. It's, to me, there's two things that stuck out about this. I had my parents over yesterday. It was happy anniversary of my parents, like 54, 55 years. So God bless them. But I explained to him, I'm like, Gable, if he's going to do this, this is the time to go. Like if he wins the world championships next month, the marginal appeal of him goes up a little bit. If he loses, his marginal appeal drops a lot. So, I mean, he's striking while the iron is hot. And the other thing is, I wish there's all these people that can calculate this stuff. How much do you think the last 2 seconds of that Olympic match changed his life economically?
It's unreal. It's I think about that a lot. I think about also, you remember that horrible penalty call for the New Orleans Saints as they got
Super Bowl, yeah.
Changes the course of all of those players' endorsement careers. They're signing trade deals as a reigning Super Bowl champion. For us in the world of wrestling, I mean, the Olympics are the pinnacle of our sport. I mean, yes, of course, we cherish and love the World Championships, and it's probably one of the tougher tournaments, even though the Olympics has less guys. But I mean, you're an Olympic champion for life. You can't, or an Olympian for that matter, right? So Olympic champion until you get put 6 feet under. I mean, that changes the course of your speaking engagements, endorsement deals, coaching opportunities.
It struck me like that with like Taylor Lujan when we didn't have the nationals. I mean, he's an Iowa. Well, he's not an Iowa guy. He's a Georgia guy, but at an Iowa school, UNI, he was the #1 seed. Had never All-American. Had a really good career. I don't mean this. It's a compliment, but he had never All-American. He was the #1 seed. And I remember telling somebody like that guy goes through and wins the nationals. Like the immediate thing I said was, how much can he charge for a clinic? How much can he charge for a speaking engagement? Like you were saying. So yeah, it's life-changing. I would have to think that Gable's win versus taking second has to be a marginal difference of like $1 million minimum. I mean, I'd have to go through and literally try to put pen to paper, and the other thing was like David Taylor a few days earlier kind of won this, not last second, but last 20-second match. And like people like, oh my God, he came from behind, he beat Yazdani. And then Gable goes, I'm going to just cut it this close, like.
Well, yeah, think about those stories that we're talking about, right? I mean, David's Olympic finals performance is, it's historic in its own right for legendary. David. Legendary, right? So like if all we're talking about was David Taylor's last second takedown, as like basically has to go get one, and Gable kind of outshines him in maybe not necessarily an Olympic moment, but how many people were talking about that versus Gable's getting shirts made by Barstool and going to the WWE? Like it's wild. It's wild to think about.
Somebody pointed this out to me, and we have a lot of coaches and a lot of kids that watch these podcasts. I think the David Taylor story, and we don't need to go back, but there's just one little nugget in here. It's a story of perseverance. David Taylor never beat Jordan Burroughs in a match that counted to make a world team. He never beat Dake in a match that counted to make a world team. He never beat Jaden to make a match to make a world team. Okay. He wins Olympic gold. Dake takes bronze. JB's doing the commentary, and Jaden, wasn't there because of the weigh-ins and stuff like that. So literally, he's against those guys. I mean, there's a bunch of other things, but just the four of us in a room, like you beat Mark, Mark beat me, I beat my little brother. He's the fourth guy, and he just stuck it out. So that's just I don't know if there's a comment there, but just an observation. So big news in high school wrestling. Cornell Robinson goes from CBC High School in St. Louis, Missouri, to Wyoming Seminary. Cornell wrestled for us in college. In fact, we're the only college he wrestled for. So I have a really close relationship with Cornell. We did a lot of RTC stuff together, a lot of stuff with like the Josh Saunders, Severados, Malik Johnsons, Vinny Zurbans. Cornell's worked his way up. He was a good wrestler. He was a state champion. He lost in the round of 12 for us to, of all people, Brock Lesnar. He lost to Brock Lesnar's freshman year. And Cornell lost like 7-6, but he was down 4-1 because he was scared. And by the time he figured out he could beat him, he just ran out of time. But Cornell's one of those guys that has worked as hard as anyone to really understand the sport of wrestling at a very high detail level. And you don't see a lot of heavyweights that are head coaches. It's usually a lot of lightweights and middleweights. He's done a great job. He'll do a great job up there. I know you know him as well, but I'm proud of him. I'm personally very proud of him. And if you want to say something, for sure do about him.
Well, I think, once again, congratulations to Coach. He's earned it. He's worked his way through. And once again, as you master your craft, there's a lot of guys that maybe were good wrestlers that are bad coaches, or there's a high demand for people that were really good that are also really good coaches. So I think, he's going to have an opportunity at, Wyoming Seminary to, get some really good kids in there, develop them to a higher level, bring maybe kind of that collegiate style atmosphere to a high school level or a program that is already, a powerhouse. So huge kudos to him. And once again, can't wait to see how he makes his stamp on that program.
Well, don't be surprised if a couple kids from CBC end up at Wyoming Seminary. I personally have talked to two of them that I think are going, and they already had a just complete hammer team up there. So it could be super, super legit. I was watching the Bob Costas show, and Bomani Jones was talking about NIL, and he made, whether you agree with him or not, he made some very poignant points. But one of the things I wrote down this analogy, and I just wanted to run it by you. I think NIL, the way it's set up now with the new change, is like the waitress analogy, where you go to a bar and the waitress is making $2 an hour. The way the waitress makes a living, or waiter, okay, but like think of a sports bar, okay? Like they're making the living off of you and me eating wings, drinking beer, and tipping. So essentially the NCAA has just set this up where these kids can get tipped. They're still not paying them. And like at least the restaurant's paying them something. So, like what Bomani Jones pointed out was everybody's acting like the NCAA did something fantastic. Is first of all, they didn't want to do it. The Supreme Court overruled them. And second of all, they're still not paying them. And I think everybody conceptually knows that, but it's an interesting point when you kind of think about it. Like there's still, all these coaches are still going to have these gazillion-dollar contracts because the money hasn't left, So and I'm sure you're knee deep in NIL making these decisions. I wanted to ask you one question. I don't know if you can answer it. If you can't, we'll just move on. How does this work if an athlete is part of a club and like an RTC or a wrestling club, and the club is sponsored by company A and the kid is signed a specific sponsorship with company B?
I mean, I can speak to specifically my experiences with that.
Okay.
So a professional athlete might be a little bit different than a collegiate athlete. So I'll use this as an example. I work with Jaden Cox. Jaden's a pro. He has a relationship with Nike as his, apparel sponsorship. He also wrestles for Titan Mercury Wrestling Club. Titan Mercury, potentially could have had a club association deal with another brand.
Okay.
Jaden's contract with me, I work with then Titan to say, hey, I have an athlete that is sponsored by your club. Specifically, I want to make a Nike uniform, garment, apparel for him in order to contractually
So he can fulfill both. Yeah.
So he can fulfill both. And once again, as long as you work with the people the right way, they're very, once again, I don't produce anything for resale value. This is strictly a gift to my athlete. I'm not trying to use their marks to profit in any way. This is solely so that he can be compliant with you as a club that's paying for his travel and, basically all of his needs, right? That is different than a professional league saying in an, like an NBA contract where the NBA has an entire agreement for their uniforms, regardless of LeBron's or Dame Lillard or whoever it is contract with their footwear or apparel company. The league has signed an exclusive agreement for their on-court uniforms.
Yeah, this is like the UFC where like Venom is the new, so like even if, let's use Gable as an example. Let's say Gable was already a Nike athlete in college, which I guess he couldn't have been, but let's just say he was. Well, he was at a Nike school. So he's wearing Nike. He likes Nike. He goes, joins the UFC. He can't go wear Nike fight shorts because the UFC has said, we're paying people X amount of dollars to walk out. We've set this up. And for that, we've taken away your ability to negotiate separate contracts. So I understand the Jaden example. Let's say that it's, okay, well, let's say it's like Ferrari. So Ferrari's got a deal. And then if Ferrari's part of XYZ wrestling club and that wrestling club is, Ferrari's deal is with Near Fall Clothing. They don't have any RTCs or wrestling clubs. So let's say that his club, the overall club is sponsored by, let's say Adidas. So now how does that work? When he goes and wrestles and he's part of the XYZ wrestling club, can he wear Near Fall or does he have to wear Adidas or how does that work?
He would, the Near Fall representative should reach out to the XYZ wrestling club to say, hey, may I use your marks specifically for my athlete? And they may say you have to pay for it. They may say they just grant him it. Basically where that comes into play is that any athlete that does not have a contractual obligation to another brand would then, that's why you would want to do a deal with an RTC, is that you get basically everybody. And then then the athlete would then have to have a specific company, come in and sponsor an athlete outside of that. So like the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club is a great example because they have a ton of different sponsorships there.
Okay.
They have, all these athletes with different brands that represent them. But if they don't have a outside contract, you wear the approved club dealed apparel. So then that forces those athletes to then go out and get their own contracts.
So Snyder's probably the most famous guy up there, and he's got his own shoe with a different company. So he gets
Snyder, David, Gilman.
Yeah, right, those guys. So, okay, but so if somebody comes over and they still have college eligibility, let's say that Nittany Lion is a Nike club, okay, just because you're Nike, and you say, and that person X, like I join Nike, I join the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club, then I go win nationals, and now whoever wants to give me shoes or a singlet or whatever. And I go, okay, because they're going to give me stuff. They're going to give me $500 or whatever.
Yep.
Can you say that person still has to wear Nike because it was part of the club and is a pre-existing condition? Or can I go make this other deal?
They can, I mean, as an athlete, you can go out and make you whatever deal that you want. Now, if you don't have it, if you don't have a contract, let's say for the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club, you would then fall under the banner of a non-sponsored club associated athlete.
I got you.
Now, once again, you still get perks by being in that club because you have a deal with whatever brand and they're taking care of you.
Right.
But if you want to go out and, make your own money and you want to be sponsored by Doritos, it's like, well, you go whatever and do whatever you want.
Doritos, I love it.
So like, if you go get big money and you want to be like, hey, you know what? I'm sponsored by Doritos now.
There you
It's
go.
like, well, okay, we got to figure out a way to make a Nittany Lion Wrestling Club Doritos t-shirt for me to be compliant with my brand, or at my post-match interviews, I have to have a bag of Doritos ready to go.
Yep, I'm pulling up this here. So, okay, so that makes sense, and that helps me understand it. And I think the waters are just going to get more muddied and convoluted. And I can, I've told you this privately. I think you work as hard as anybody I know in wrestling, and I think it's getting more complicated. If Shane Goodell listens to this, hire Grant Turner an assistant. Hire that man an assistant. Let him hand some things off and keep making big deals so that Nike keeps doing a great job. Okay, so World Team Trials are this weekend. Full disclosure, I am a part of the Midwest Beach Wrestling Nationals. I will be going there this weekend, doing the play-by-play. Shout out to my guys, Austin Roper and Cody Hummer, who have put that event together and have brought guys like me and Dorothy Mayab and Kyle Mankiewicz and a bunch of the people that GT, and we're down there helping make the event happen. But those guys, both young guys, well under 30, crushing it. Both come from big-time wrestling families. Everybody in Roper's family, well, Roper's dad was Wes Roper, and everybody in Hummer's family they all got a gazillion state medals. So, but the World Team Trials are in Lincoln, Nebraska this weekend. And just to catch everybody up, the way it works is if you medaled at the Olympic weight and you say, I want to wrestle at the World Championships, it's a wrap. That's it. You're the guy or the girl. Okay. And then if you didn't medal, I believe you'll be the number 1 seed. And if you want to wrestle a different weight class, one of the non-Olympic weight classes, you are in the semis of that weight class. So what that means is in men's freestyle, well, in Greco, nobody medaled, so it's not that complicated. In women's, Sarah Hildebrandt has the spot, Maroulis has the spot, Mensa Stock has the spot, Adeline Gray has the spot. Winchester is moving up 2 kilos, which I think she was big for 53. I think 55 is like a much better fit for her. And then Kayla Miracle will just be the number 1 seed because she went 0-1 at the Olympics. In men's freestyle, Gilman has the spot, Dake has the spot, Taylor has the spot, Snyder has the spot, Gable waived his spot. So my guess is Gwizdowski or Paris will be the number 1 seed. We'll talk about that. And then at 65, that weight is open, in addition to the 4 non-Olympic weights in each of these styles. So we got about 20 minutes left. We'll just go through these. We'll probably just focus most of our time on men's freestyle. So here's the guys registered, and this is on Flow. I don't know if there's a more recent one of these, but Suriano, Arujau, Fix, Gross, Tomasello, Cologne, Shelton Mack, Tyler Graf, Nashon Garrett, Zane Richards, Daniel DeShazer, Lee Zach Sanders, Sean Foz. I mean, you really have to go even down to Josh Kramer. He made the finals of that tournament in Coralville a couple months ago and was like 2 seconds away from beating Shelton Mack. I've seen articles on how you seed this, and there's almost, this is crazy. And I don't mean a mess. I mean, it's awesome, like in the best possible way, because the quarterfinal matchups in this are going to be insane. I don't know that this is the order, but if you just count names here, Suriano's 1, Arujau 2, Fix 3, Gross 4, NATO 5, Cologne 6, Shelton Mack 7, Graf 8. Garrett is in the 8-9 matchup. Zane's in the 7-10. The Shazers in the 6-11. I mean, it's going to be insane. So I'll leave this here and not get a mouse frenzy. When you think about these guys, maybe just what matchups do you think would be the most interesting? Yeah, let's just start there. What matchups do you think are the most interesting here?
Well, I think what is really cool about this 61 kilo weight class is that you got a whole bunch of guys that were previously 57 kilos trying to make a world team. And you got some guys that are pure 61 kilo guys trying to make a world team. I think it's a clash of it. You're going to see some guys that might be a little bit undersized, and you're going to see some guys that look like monsters. So it's going to maybe look a little bit different, because I know for a fact my dude Joe Colon at 61 is a huge problem for a lot of people. At 57, he cuts a lot of weight. I mean, he cuts a great deal of amount of weight to make 61 as well, but he's a totally different animal up at 61 versus 57, in my opinion.
He's a world medalist, right? Like from 2018 or 17.
2018 in Budapest, he was a world bronze medalist.
And wrestled insanely well. Like didn't squeak a bunch of however you medal, but it wasn't like he was just squeaking matches out. Yeah,
and I think then you have other guys like Vito that's, primarily been a 57 kilo guy for a majority of his career. Dayton Fix going up to 61. First time that I believe that he's going to be at 61, because he was previous world team member in 2019.
Yes.
Yep. So, I think there's just, Tomasello is, going up. He had been a 57 kilo guy. Now he's at 61. I think he's, in my opinion, probably a better 61 kilo guy, but, he's also extremely short.
Yeah.
And once again,
I have a lot of love for short guys that are trying to make it happen. But
another amazing short guy is Tyler Graf.
That's what I was scrolling down to. So Tyler Graf was on the world team in 2019, because I remember that those were the worlds I got to do the play-by-play for. And I think he lost. I think he took 5th. I think he lost in the bronze medal match. You're the expert on this stuff. That's one of the reasons we have you on. But they were saying in an article that he could literally be the #1 seed. To me, what's interesting is, like you said, how many of these guys? So if you kind of look at it, Suriano can make 57, Vito can make 57. And when I say make it, and like wrestle well, okay,
right.
Okay, because obviously like Seth Gross and Cologne can make it, but they did not look really like themselves at the trials. But Suriano, Arujau, Fix are 57s to me. I think Tomasello is. Gross, Cologne, and Mack are clearly 61s. Graf's a 61. Nation's a 61. Richards is a 57. And so like you're saying, Sanders is clearly a 57. Kramer's a 61. This is crazy. Like it's kind of half and half. We've seen some of these matchups before. I think the one match that everybody would like to see, and I don't think there'll be a lot of scoring, but would be Suriano Fix. Just because they've had so many epic matches like back in high school and the NCAA finals, and did the headgear get pulled and all that other stuff. The other match, if you just want to bet an over-under, is Seth Gross and Joe Cologne. I would like to give some advice to those two corners. Do not throw your brick early. There will be about 9 challenges that happen in that match.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay. So people understand that is the weight that is between 57, which is Gilman's weight, and then 65, which was the Jordan Oliver weight. Because I know a lot of people love wrestling, but it's hard to keep all these weight classes straight. So, and 61's 134.2 pounds, I believe. Somewhere in that range, because 60 is 132. Okay. We go to 65 kilos. So this weight is being wrestled now because Jordan Oliver did not qualify us for the Olympics, us being the United States. Yanni, McKenna, Fletcher, Henderson, Heil. I think there's probably some more guys in here. I don't know. The surprising thing to me is Nick Lee's not in here. Because, and I know he's in the middle of sort of in the middle, but at the beginning of a college season, but Nick Lee would be the #2 seed. And then I don't know if Ironman's in here or not, but he would be in here as well. So if you look at this list, it's Yanni and McKenna are clearly the favorites to make the finals. And McKenna would be the #1 seed based on him being the Olympic trials runner-up, correct?
I believe so.
Yeah. So what's interesting is 65s, if these are the list, doesn't have a ton of drama to it. You go to 70, Zane, J.O., JG, Deacon, Pantaleo, Berger, Brayton Lee, Elroy Perkin, and then the 2 Mizzou kids, Jake Hughes and Mahler. The first 5 here Okay, how do you seed this? I know Pantaleo won that big, because he came on my podcast, he won that big tournament. And, and I think he won the Pan Ams, if I'm not mistaken. And then Deacon has beaten Green. Green has beaten Pantaleo most of the times, but lost to him most frequently. Jordan has beaten Zane, but Zane was the world team member in 19. Jordan was the world team member in 20, which is 21. But those were both at 65 kilos. So, like, how do you see this, and what's the match that is like most fascinating to you?
Well, I think it's 70. I think one, Jo, Zane. I mean, they basically have zero criteria to be the number one, number two, number three seeds over guys that are. I mean, Alec Pantaleo is currently ranked number one in the world at 70 kg. So I think one of the matches that I really want to see is I really want to see James Green Jo. I think that would be a freaking cool match to see. And then I want to see, Zane versus Pantaleo again. Because I believe that they wrestled on that Rockfin card.
Yeah, probably.
I think it was in Pennsylvania when they did the Nittany Lion Cliff Keen Wrestling Club duel. Once again, it's been a while. That was during the pandemic. There was things going on. There was tons of events going on for these guys to compete at. Didn't know if it was a catch weight, but I think those guys are freaking talented. But as far as seeds are concerned, I think you stick to it as best you can, because literally you have zero criteria at that weight class. Doesn't mean that you're not good. Doesn't mean that Jo and Zane are not worthy of being potentially the number one seed at that weight class, but you haven't wrestled it. It's very similar to the UWW concept. Like, hey, you might be the number one ranked guy in the world at 61 kg, but you haven't wrestled 65 ever. Doesn't mean.
Yeah, that's an interesting conundrum too, because we would have to deal with that with rankings. Okay. The nice thing about rankings were, and I always would say this, like, thank God I'm not literally influencing the bracket, right? Because you're making educated guesses and decisions, but at the end of the day, you want the best guys to qualify and all that other stuff. But like, if you were the national champion at 157 and you move up to 165, here's the craziest one. When Gable Stevenson came in as a freshman, Andy Hamilton goes, where are you going to rank him? I go, I'm either going to rank him 5 or 33. He goes, how do you figure that? I go, well, Tanner Hall would be 5, and he tech fault Tanner Hall in a minute, but it was in freestyle. But he did do it, and he just took him down 5 times. He didn't leg lace him. So I think I could certainly justify him there, or I have to put him at 33 so nobody thinks I'm an idiot and forgot about it, which is not a real reason, but I don't want people to think I'm stupid. I mean, I'm gonna be honest, So I think what would be interesting here would be if, say, Pantaleo was 1, Green was 2, then Deacon, what criteria do they put the, Jo 3, Rutherford 4, and then Deacon 5? It could go a lot of different ways, but it'll be really interesting. Yeah, for sure. So 79, just awesome. JB, Ringer is back. We love Ringer. Imar apparently has his weight down. Nolf is moving up. Starachi, that's his basic college weight. We should put a side bet on, or at least lay odds on, if Pat Downey can make 79 kilograms. Okay, that's been a long time. McFadden, Evan Wick, Hayden Hidley, the previously mentioned Taylor Lujan, Chance Marsteller, Tommy Gant, Joey LaValle, Devin Skatska, Mohammed McBride, Ashworth, O'Malley, Quentin Perez. Unbelievable here, man. Like, I mean, obviously JB's the favorite, but, I would guess Ringer and Imar are the 2 and 3 seeds, although Ringer hasn't wrestled in forever, because the last time we saw him wrestle was against Dake at the World Trials, where they had that special wrestle off down in Texas?
Yep.
Was that 19?
Yeah, and I believe he wrestled. I don't remember when it was, but I know that he wrestled Zahid up at 86, but he hasn't wrestled a whole bunch of guys at 79. I think it would have been the special wrestle off for with him and Dake at 79 in 19.
Let's start with this. Does Pat Downey make 79?
In my professional opinion, no.
That's a long way to go.
Pat's a big, I mean, and
Yes.
realistically, if I was coaching Pat Downey and I was sitting in his corner, I would have told him to go 92. I think he's better when he's bigger. And I don't remember the last time he had been this low.
He wrestled JUCOs. I think he won it at 97, 197.
Yes, he did. Yep.
Okay, which is basically 90 kilos because 90 is 198.
Yep.
And then at Iowa State, he was an All-American at 97, right? Or 84, 184,
I believe
197.
he was a All-American at, I think it was 84.
Okay, so let's say that. I think that's wrong though, because I think he pinned Haught. And so I think it was 97. But either way, let's just say it was 184. Then he made the world team at 86 kilos, which is 189 pounds, give or take. So now he'd go down to 79. So that's a 7 kilo, 15.4 pound drop. So, man, if he's down there, he's living his life perfectly, and he's going to be a freaking problem if he makes it. So what's interesting here is like, I think Burroughs is the one and Ringer and Imar are some combination of 2 and the 3, although I guess Ringer might not get seated at all because of what we said. I mean, this all depends on how far back you go with stuff and what counts and what doesn't. I mean, this is going to be interesting, you know, and it's funny because JB would always tease Dake about you won medals, but at the non-Olympic weights, and now the worm is turned or the shoe is on the other foot or whatever analogy you want to use. So, and then you got Hidley, who's bumped up to 174. So this would be a good chance to see how big for college. And then Wick's going to go 74 in college up a weight. So that'll be interesting to see. 92, Jaden, Kyvan, Nate, Miles Martin, Machiavello, Colin Moore, Hoagie Hidley, Drew Foster, Dudley Miklas, Jacob Woodley. And I mean, that's a deep list. This is Jaden's weight if he wrestles well, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's some heavy hitters in here. I mean, Nate's
ranked number 1 in the world, right?
Nate's ranked number 1 in the world. Colin Moore is, you know, multiple time world team or world medalist at U23s. You know, Miles Martin has been very formidable on the international circuit, wrestling at 86, but now he's up to 92. You know, Kyvan Gadsden has been a perennial number 2 for the past Olympic quad at 97 behind Kyle Snyder. And then he dropped to the 92 kilo weight class at the US Open in Iowa City. But I mean, Jaden has proven himself at 92 kilos as, you know, multiple time world champion at that weight class. But, you know, last time out when he wrestled in Poland, he didn't look like himself. You know, he kind of missed on a couple of leg attacks, ended up getting beat. I think Nate outplaced him at that tournament, and currently ranked number 1 in the world is Nate Jackson. So, you know, I mean, this is amazing because we can't have anybody at 86 and we can't have anybody at 97 due to our success at the Olympic weight classes. Yeah. And, you know, you're seeing some of these guys shift, you know, because Drew Foster himself is an 86 kilo guy. Yeah. Lujan, you know, he was at 86, but now he's at 79. So you're seeing guys like kind of move up and down in order to make this world team. But you could see this, you know, kind of continuing moving forward because if our Olympians continue to medal, you're going to have the same kind of things happening. You're going to see a little bit of a separation between weight classes.
The Price is Right squeeze play game. Yeah. And Jaden and Nate are training together in New Jersey. Miles Martin and Colin Moore know each other from college. So Hidley and Machiavello are both out at NC State. So familiarity. 97, we're not wrestling because of Snyder. Heavyweight, Gwiz, Mason Paris, Dom, Walls, and, you know, Austin Schaefer is up. That's interesting. So Paris beat Gwiz the last time they wrestled because Gwiz had the number 1 seed at the Olympic trials. And Paris lost to Gable in the semifinals of the Olympic trials, but I think Paris beat Gwiz at one of those flow events that's in the pandemic, like you're saying. But it feels like, I mean, you can't ever count out Dom and Walls and those guys, but the consistency of Gwiz and Paris feels like he's the new guy. And if there's no Gable, then it gets really interesting, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think at heavyweight, and I think, Gwizdowski has been, the benchmark of success for U.S. heavyweights the past Olympic quad up until basically getting beat by Olympic champion, Gable Stevenson. But, Dom Bradley is the ultimate gatekeeper. Like that guy, he has consistently wrestled well over the past 10 years. So you really got to strap it up when you're trying to beat somebody like Dom Bradley. I mean, I really do like Mason Paris a lot on the international circuit just because of his technique and build and speed. But there's a couple other guys that can make some noise in there, especially within freestyle. I do like the gentleman out of Pitt, Demetrius
Thomas.
Yeah, he looked really good the last time I saw him wrestle. He's given a lot of pandemic time to train. Those guys could have made some big jumps in a short amount of time. I'm surprised to see Hayden Zilmer all the way up there because he's a 97 kilo guy, and potentially even a 92 kg guy. But Hayden Zilmer used to wrestle 149 pounds in college. The man just continues to grow.
Yeah, Zilmer's an interesting one. That was the name that stuck out to me because he has no matches against any of those guys. He could kind of be that smaller athletic heavyweight that might cause some of those guys some problems. So anyway, you're going to be there this weekend. What people need to understand is, one, this definitely helps us. They counted the Olympics as the 2020 year, okay, even though it was wrestled in 21, just for people sorting the stuff out. So what's coming up in Oslo is the 21 World Championships. The 21 World Championships will determine our ladder for the U.S. Open for 22. And again, unless USA Wrestling changes something, and I don't think they would because it's working, if you place at the 21 Worlds, you're probably going to be sitting out to the World Team Trials of the 22 finals. But if you place at the non-Olympic weights, which is what besides, 65 and 125 or not, but like these other weights, you can get a bye to the semis, which is like essentially where Jaden was and Dake were this year at the Olympic trials. So if you're trying to make the Olympic team, this is really critical now, because if you can get that, then you can get in that bracket. And then even if you don't make the team, you're going to be seated higher. And next thing you know, it's 23. It's the year before the trials. And, and then we're going to be talking about, we got to place at the Pan Ams, we got to qualify our guys. So we're not like putting Jordan Oliver in that kind of situation where, he's got to do the gamesmanship with, Musakayev and all those guys. I know how to pronounce like 3 names. I just say those 3 names. I give the other 300 to you, GT. I'm 10-2.
Hey, I'll just give the other 500 to JB, and then I'll try to mimic what he says. So
yeah. Shout out to JB. The year I did the Worlds, he was great. Sent me a complete pronunciation list. And this is a perfect way to sign off because we're almost done. He's got all these lists and then the phonetic spellings. And he had Pat Smith in there. And then next to it, he wrote really. So, which is like so great, right?
Yeah. I love having the announcer from whatever the host country work with JB, and all of a sudden, you hear them speak in their whatever host country's language, and then all of a sudden it's Pat Smith, USA. Like, no, that was pretty easy.
There you go. All right. Well, we will do a recap of the World Team Trials next week, and I'll tell you about my sunburn and some good stories down there at the Beach Nationals. Everybody, thank you so much for watching, listening, and sharing. We'll see you all next week.